Should we just be right here? Hestam Chalit, Okawan Eloi, Winnemum Wintu Waiwaket, Okawan Buyum Puyuk, Puyukadam, Hoana Chala Bim. Okawan Eloi Purum, Chalama Purum. Okawan Eloi Mutaskuyum. Asking the Creator to watch over us here today and help us to open our eyes and open our ears and put these things in our heart so that we know things. And wherever the rivers flow, like the Winnemum Waiwaket, all of the rivers around the world, that we pray to this water right here. You know, water is that sacred being that helps support all life. Nothing can live without it. And so Salwal Mem is what we call this. And we have a relationship with this water that comes out of Mother Earth before it ever hits your tap. And so we're going to pray for that to continue on around the world, because we know that singing to our water is not enough. We have to sing to the world's water. And so this song that we want to share, this is my son also, a warrior and one who stands for our land. He comes from our way of thinking about these things. And we still believe in the good things coming. And when we're here looking out at this audience right here, you are those good things that are coming. And so we ask that Creator to bless you. Whatever your struggles are, all the things that you're handling in your life, to have been able to come here. And then when you take this message somewhere else, you're going to carry this, you know, maybe around the world, we don't know. But we want to put this song in your heart and your mind so that you have that strength to speak up and to show up and to stand up and say the good things. Yeah. Netto pomni men ken huyana. 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 Pomni men ken huyana. Pomni men ken huyana. Pomni men ken huyana. Netto 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 pomni men ken huyana. Pomni men ken huyana. Pomni men ken huyana. Pomni men ken huyana. Netto pomni men ken huyana. Netto pomni men ken huyana. Oh, and turn our sign around. You know, we're all struggling to do the right thing and say the right things. And so this song that we shared with you here today, it's a Winnemum Wintu song, and it comes from the river. And it tells us about how if we believe that we will still be standing when the earthquakes come, when the bad things come. It'll roll over us as it does the rocks, and we will be living again. And so we believe that we're coming to that time when those things are going to happen in this world. And so we're singing that song, and I know that Indigenous peoples around the world are also singing those very heartfelt, deep connection songs to Mother Earth, and asking that people continue on living. And we'll do the best that we can. We'll always be singing to that water. So thank you very much, and have a nice day. I hope everything turns out, and all of the Indigenous people will have a chance to become speakers and share the knowledge that has existed for umpteen generations before universities. Oh.
Thank you so much. So next up, I want to welcome a good friend of mine, an environmentalist, an author who's written more than 20 books. And this person is going to help frame the weekend for us, just so everyone knows where we're going and what this whole conference is about. And that's Derrick Jensen. Please welcome him.
So thank you all for coming. And we have a really packed day, so I'm just going to get right to it. Well, I said a bunch of really brilliant things already. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we just need you to speak up a little bit, man.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I feel like I'm talking to the fucking feds, you know? It's like, look, we don't want fracking. Can you hear us now? I guess somebody heard that. Don't think the decision makers. So can you hear me? Okay. Keep up this volume right here. Okay. Thank you very much. Good day. Every night during the winter, I carry firewood into my elderly mother's house for her to burn the next day in her wood stove. And every time I pick up a piece of wood, I look it over carefully for spiders and sow bugs, whom I gently relocate into the wood pile. I do this, obviously, so they won't be burned to death. But I'm always aware that I'm only putting off the inevitable. Through the winter, the woodpile shrinks and shrinks until eventually it's gone. And it's long been clear to me that this story is in many ways a scaled-down version of what this culture is doing to the planet, and also a scaled-down version of even the best and most heartfelt of our environmental activism. So far as the former, my real introduction to this culture's environmental destructiveness, as well as my own desire and need to stop it, came when I was 7, when somebody put in a subdivision next to where I lived, destroying the grasslands. Over those few months, the garter snakes and meadowlarks lost their homes, the cottonwoods are cut, the toads and salamanders and grasshoppers were killed or displaced. It was clear to me, even at that young age, not only that that process was unjust, but that it couldn't continue forever. If you keep on destroying others' homes, eventually they'll have no place to live, and eventually you'll have no more room to expand. In 2nd grade, I saw that infinite growth was both immoral and insane. Fast forward a couple of decades to when I became a grassroots environmental activist. And I again, or rather still, felt the same sorrow and frustration. I saw the truth of what David Brower famously said: as environmentalists, all our defeats are permanent and our victories are temporary. I saw so many women and men dedicating their lives to saving this or that patch of forest, this or that stretch of river or stream, this or that plant or animal or fungi they loved. I saw so many of us holding on by our fingernails as the culture implacably destroyed everyone and everything we loved. So many of us asked each other, holding on till when? And the answer was always, till the economy collapses, because it won't stop expanding till then. Some days brought temporary victories, and some days brought permanent defeats. Many places we'd save 1 year, then fight again to save the next, and the next, and the next, until finally 1 year we'd lose, and the forest would be cut or the dam would be built. As important as was this defensive work, and as precious as were the time and lives we bought, it never seemed good enough to me that the best we could hope for was that we were allowing a few more generations of lynx and Selkirk caribou and bull trout to live out harried lives until ultimately they'd be exterminated. I'm known for saying that civilization is killing the planet and that it needs to be stopped before it kills what or who is left. I don't say this because I hate hot showers or Beethoven's Ninth. I say it because I've long been capable of doing simple math. I can do subtraction. I know that if there are 6 billion passenger pigeons and you subtract 1 billion and then another billion and you keep subtracting them faster than they can add to their own population, then eventually there'll be none. I know that if there are uncountable salmon and you reduce their numbers to where you can count them and then you keep subtracting, eventually there'll be none. I know that if you estimate the weight of all the fish in the oceans in 1870 and you call that 100%, and then you keep subtracting fish until by 2010 you get down to 10%, then there's something deeply wrong with what you're doing. I know that the same is true for native forests reduced from 100 to 2%, native grasslands and wetlands reduced the same. And I also want to bring down civilization because I know how to add. I know that if you take a number, say 315 as in parts per million, and keep adding to it, eventually you get to 350. And if you keep adding to that, you get to 400. And if you keep adding that to that, you get to hell. I don't understand why so many of us don't seem to know how to subtract or to add. Oh, sure, I understand that people come up with lots of rationalizations for avoiding the simple math, and they come up with lots of fancy names and algorithms to attempt to convince themselves that 100 minus 90 doesn't equal 10, or that 315 plus 85 doesn't equal 400, or that somehow hot showers, Beethoven's ninth, and high-speed internet access for some of us all add up to more than life on Earth. But whether you call it managing forests, generating hydroelectric power, developing natural resources, sustainable development, or any of 1,000 other names, the subtraction and the addition continue. What makes this whole thing even more insane is that the economic system requires constant addition, and this addition requires and creates subtraction, by which I mean capitalism requires that production grow 2 or 3% each year, and production is a measure of the subtraction. That is, production is the conversion of the living to the dead. That is, forests into 2x4s, schools of fish into fish sticks, sushi, fertilizer. The math is both simple and tragic. I think that for some people, especially those in power, the only math that matters is constant addition to their bank accounts. But I think that so many of the rest of us do what we can to avoid this math, because if we do the subtraction and do the addition, our own personal sum will be unbearable sorrow, terror, and a feeling of being entirely out of control. Sort of what I'm guessing the spiders and sow bugs I miss must feel when they see themselves going into the wood stove. I think many of us do what we can to avoid this math because we know that if we do the subtraction, do the addition, our psyches and our consciences and our lives will forever be changed. And we know that no matter how fierce the momentum that leads to the subtraction addition, no matter our fears that we may be crushed, or perhaps more fearsome, ridiculed, we'll be led in some way to oppose the subtraction of life and the addition of toxics to the planet that's our only home. I'll tell you my fear, and I'll tell you my dream. My fear is that the subtraction and the addition continue until there's nothing left on this planet but ashes and dust. That the oceans, which this culture has caused to go from 100 to 10, continue down to 0. That the 200 species this culture causes to go extinct each day increases to 300, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6. That the migratory songbird populations who have collapsed, and then collapsed, and then collapsed, disappear into that eternal night of extinction. That the bumblebees and dragonflies and bats and spiders and sow bugs, whom I already see far less frequently than even a few years ago, disappear as well. That the plastics that now outnumber the phytoplankton by 10 to 1 increase that ratio to 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1, and so on. That what was 315 and then 350 and then 400 continues to rise. In other words, rationalizations and fancy names and algorithms notwithstanding, the business continues as usual. I'll tell you another fear, that the subtraction and the addition will last even one more day, because for this 200 species and for all of us, that's one day too many. Of course, business as usual can't continue forever. I knew that when I was 7. We all, by which I mean those of us with any sense whatsoever, know this can't go on. You can't continue to subtract life and add toxins forever. But it's gone on long enough to reduce a number from 100 to 10, to reduce another from 6 billion to 0, another from 100 to 2. In other words, it's gone on far too long, and it can reduce those numbers to 0. I've never forgotten something my dear friend and environmental mentor John Osborne has often said to me about why he does his work. We cannot predict the future. As things become increasingly chaotic, I want to make sure that some doors remain open. What he means by this is that if lynx and Selkirk caribou and bull trout are alive in 10 years, they may be alive in 100. If they're extinct in 10 years, they're gone forever. If he can keep this or that patch of old growth standing for 10 years, or this or that river free-flowing for 10 years, it may be alive in 100. If it's cut or dammed now, the damage is done. He's saying, these will not go down on my watch. So here's my dream. And this is what I spend my life working toward. The subtraction and addition switch places, so that each day there is more life on this planet, more fish and birds and insects, more forests and free-flowing rivers and grasslands and wetlands, more indigenous peoples on their own land, and there are less toxics. This won't happen because of rationalizations or fancy names or new algorithms. This will only happen because the social conditions on every level from the epistemological to the infrastructural that lead to the subtraction addition completely change. That will happen. The only question really is what's left of the planet when it does. In the meantime, it's up to each of us to ask what we love and then to defend that beloved. It is time for each of us to say, not on my watch. So thank you and welcome. So I don't know why I'm wandering back out here. We have a panel now, which I guess I am de facto introducing. Did you want to introduce it? Sorry, I jumped out here before. Okay, we have a panel.
Okay, our first panel this weekend is going to be about the topic of colonization. And so Derrick is going to introduce the speakers, and he will be moderating the panel, so I'll leave him for that.
You sit anywhere except in the first chair.
Okay.
This is where I'm supposed to sit, evidently. I'm separated from everybody.
Welcome.
Okay, so this first panel I would like to introduce. I'm really, really honored to introduce some people. I'm going to do it real quick so that they can talk as long as they can. At the far side is Chief Caleen Sisk. She's a spiritual leader and tribal chief of the Winnemum Wintu tribe, who practice their traditional culture and ceremonies in their territory along the McCloud River watershed in Northern California near Mount Shasta. In the middle is Jeannette Armstrong. She is a Seal Okanagan, a fluent speaker of Okanagan and a traditional knowledge keeper of the Okanagan Nation. She currently holds the Canada Research Chair in Okanagan Indigenous Knowledge and Philosophy at UBC Okanagan. And just on a personal note, she is probably the single most influential person to my thinking. And Ann Keala Kelly is a native Hawaiian filmmaker and journalist. Her award-winning documentary, Noho Heva, dispels any idea people may have about Hawaii as a passive Polynesian paradise. For 14 years, she's been documenting and reporting on Hawaiian resistance to the U.S. occupation, the spiritual, cultural, and environmental destruction of Hawaii.
Well, it's great to be here with you guys and to talk about these different things that are in our world today. And I'm happy to be sitting with these ladies here because I believe that it is the women of the world right now who are carrying the load and pushing everything to the good side. I also have to mention that my shawl here is from people in Hawaii. Pua Case is one of the people who was standing up from Mauna Kea to stop the telescope from going on top. And I happen to agree with her because I'm from Mount Shasta. And Boyumpuyuk and Mauna Kea, they don't think that there should be any more of that stuff going on. And we're just the messengers. We're the ones trying to convince the people we shouldn't do those things to those sacred, majestic mountains anymore because they're part of our water system. And when we do things like that, we're really kind of taking from ourselves and our future generations. And in my world, you know, my future generation was standing up here, singing with me a little while ago. And I also have ones that are on their way to become a part of this world. And so, it's right now. It's not someday. It's right now. And so, you know, my Grams was the leader of my people for 68 years. And we're on that same kind of system. And, you know, I'm only in my 14th year of leading as the chief of the Winnemum Wintu. But I hope I go 68 years. You know, it's a long time to be responsible for a people and the world. You know, we go to Mount Shasta at that sacred pool, Sawamem, and we sing to that water. And once we sing to that water, the water is gone from us. It's already going down the stream. It's already heading to this ocean right here in this place where the Ohlone people are from. And the Ohlone people, they do their ceremonies still as well. You know, in spite of all of the, what they call modernization and civilization, you know, it wasn't very civil to us indigenous peoples who were here in a civilized, really harmonious world. And we see that now when we look at our sisters who are struggling in Peru and around the world in trying to take care of the sacred potatoes up on top of Pachamuchi and Uchimek Mountain in Altai. That these things are coming up for all of us around the world, but more so in the women, because I think that, we're really connected to that water. Graham says, most people are, 80, 90% water, but women are the ones who carry that sack of water that births all babies. And when they come out in that sacred water. And so we have to kind of remember that now, because, my question, and I don't know if there's scientific folks around that know this answer, but the thing that I'm looking for is that everybody knows there's only a finite of water in the world, right? There's a finite of water, and they say that's like 2% and only 1% is reachable for drinking, right? And so if we know that that is true about drinking water, then how much are we polluting purposefully every day? How much do we frack because we know that we create poison water when we frack? We know that we create poison water when we bottle the water. We know that we do it when we transfer coal. We know when we're doing that, when we're taking pristine water and converting it to poison water. Like on Mount Shasta right now, they're talking about opening up another water bottling company called Crystal Geyser. And a lot of people depend on the water bottling companies now. They have wormed their way into being necessary, and especially in towns that have no good drinking water in their taps anymore. So now the water bottling companies have managed to become necessary. And so people don't really think about, they're going to tap into a lava tube on Mount Shasta, take half of that pristine crystal water and bottle it, which isn't really good for you anyway, and then poison the rest of it. And it'll go into the sewage tanks that they're promising to build for the city of Mount Shasta. So it's like, how do people think like that? It's like, I just don't know. But we should find out, especially here in California with our water systems that Governor Brown is talking about, when we know that the water that's being transferred or developed, and they say it's going to be more water, 2 of those pipelines are going to go off for fracking. Why do we allow that? Because you know what? We can live on without electricity, believe it or not. People did for many, many years before it was here. And it's a convenience. But no one in the world, nothing in the world can live without water, good water. And we're not upset, when people say every river in California is contaminated. Did you know that? I was appalled. It's like, what? Why aren't we teaching that in school? Why aren't we designing these little brains that are going to fix that? Or have we given up hope? Is it hopeless now? We just can't go back and put tules back in the river. We just don't know that there was tules in this whole valley, in this whole area of San Francisco. But if you look back on the history of the Indian people, everything is made out of tules. And I look around and I think, wow, where did they get so many tules? Because there's just nothing today, right? There's no tules. Not even everybody knows about tules. But they're a natural water purifier. But we're not using the education they say that, everybody needs to have. So what I'm asking is that we, like here, which I'm very grateful to be here, get to a place where more people can listen to some traditional knowledge of the people who lived here all this time and still depend on picking the reeds and the plants for basket making, for net making, for dancing. We still have the relationship with our birds and watching their struggles as well when their eggs won't form right. When things are happening to their habitat, the Forest Service tells us, we're going to cut those trees in a non-nesting season. When is that? When is there a non-nesting season? That's like saying, the people just don't have kids during these months, and so we're just going to ruin their homes during that time. And they can rebuild when they come back, if they do. I come from a very long line of traditional spiritual leaders who have got us this far with the knowledge that we have. We are struggling to bring back our salmon from New Zealand, where they were sent in the early 1900s, and now our river has no salmon at all. Yet the government refuses to let us be on the committee to address the pilot project of bringing salmon back to our river. And the best brood stock for salmon, because they're not endangered in New Zealand, is them. And the ones with the DNA to come back and swim from this bay all the way to Mount Shasta is them. Why won't they do that? Why wouldn't they do that? But there's so many things around the world that I'm interested in, and I'm working with different people who are standing up for these things, and I support them wholeheartedly. The pipeline people and the people in Canada and the tar sands and all of these ugly things that is driven at the same time that we're losing everything. It reminds me of Winnie the Pooh when he's got this idea to get the honey out of the tree, and he tells Christopher Robin to walk up and down the path with his umbrella while he takes this balloon and floats up to get the honey. He gets the honey and he's finally finished. But Christopher is putting on this facade, walking back and forth saying, gee, it looks like rain, looks like rain. And there's no rain, right? But he's a little black rain cloud. And when he's finished, he can't get down. And Christopher yells to him, let go. And he says, I can't let go. He goes, well, you have to let go to get down. And he goes, well, you'll have to get the slingshot and break the balloon. Even though the result is the same, we can't let go. But we need to let go of some of those things and readjust how we do things. So I'm glad to be on this panel, and thank you very much.
I just said greetings to everyone from my people, my community. I'm from two sides of occupied Okanagan territory, British Columbia and Washington State. I'm Syilx Okanagan. That's my growing up and my understanding that as an Indigenous person, as a Syilx person, that the way that we lived, the way that we grew up, the way that I grew up in my community was a healthy way to be. Not just the body of health, but the mind and the spirit of health that we as human beings have given to us through our mind intelligence, so that we could achieve a level that we were meant to achieve. And so what I want to talk about today is about that. The idea of shifting from knowing that we're doing something really wrong, that all of us are part of this, from knowing about it to doing something about it. And I think that I really want to thank the sponsors and really want to give great respect to the work that Derrick does, and others of you that are out there obviously are here because you care and because you're doing that work, and you're so needed, and every one of you needs to make sure that 100 people or 1,000 people are listening to you, because they need to hear these things and they need to do these things that you're doing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the main point of my experience of being Indigenous, and then I want to talk about how that is really foundational, I think, to the idea that we need to shift ourselves. It's not just a matter of, in my mind, lack of chains that we somehow can't understand in our lives, but it's in looking at what it is that makes us human, what it is that makes us what we're doing right now. And so I think that question has to be confronted in a really truthful and a really serious way. Some of the things that Chief here, Ilmichum in our language here, has brought forward, I think is really way more incredibly important than we put thought to. We think about Indigenous people and we think about, oh, yeah, I support their right to be Indigenous, their right to do their culture, their right to do their things, and I'll stand with them to help do that, but I'm going to turn around and go back and live the way I live and the way I think and the way I am. And I think there's something really wrong with that. Because Indigenousness isn't just about culture. I don't even think it's about race. I don't think it's about ethnicity. I think it is about how you respond to the living things in the place that you live. It is a set of values. And you cannot live those values unless you have knowledge about that place. Knowledge about what lives there and why you need to be in tune with that and why you need to protect that with your life, like some of our people are doing, and protect that against all odds. We don't have things to gain in the material world when we stand in front of those trucks at those roadblocks and we have those guns pointed to us, which we have done up there and every other place in the world. You need to be standing there with us. And you need not only to stand there with us and then go back home, you need to think about what it is to live that way. And so I know that most of you agree with this, so I'm talking to the converted. And so what I want to say about that is that there is a depth of experience from being Indigenous. I'm a fluent speaker. My grandfather, my great-grandfather was Chief Kanaka. He was the manager of the whole Upper Columbia River salmon system. There is not one salmon that reaches that community now because of the Grand Coulee Dam. And my grandparents' home is under Lake Roosevelt. That's where I come from, and that's where my emotions come from. But I go every year to our ceremonies there, in my community at Inchlim, with my brother, with my uncle, with my cousins, and we make those prayers every year to those salmon to return to that place. That's the place we need to get to as all of people, in every place that we're at. We need to understand what drives us to feel that, to experience that, and to know that is how we are supposed to be as human beings. Those are the things that I want to talk about. Those are the things that I want to invite you to be. We invite, as Okanagan people, everybody to come to those ceremonies. We don't close them. We say, you need to feel that. You need to understand that you can be at home here, that you don't have to be the alien here, the colonizer here. You don't have to long to be home. You can belong, but there is a way to do that. And it has to be about the life of the land in the places that you occupy, the living things. They're indigenous because they learned how to be there over millions of years and thousands of years. And we as indigenous peoples learned that road, learned that path with them. That spirit has to be there planet-wide. One of my mentors, John Mohawk, said, it's not about indigenous peoples as ethnicity or race. It's about re-indigenizing the planet. We have to confront that and learn how to do that. And I know that most of you have that in your hearts. I know that most of you feel that. Feel that when things are going so bad, when you go and see the things like the tar sands. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. Look at, if you can't go there, look at Christopher McLeod, Toby McLeod's film, Standing Ground, and you can see what is going on. And feel that. Feel what is happening with the living things, the living water, the living beings that we're displacing and making extinct. In my community, many of the life forms we are called the hotspot in Canada of extinct animals and insects and birds. And part of my work every day is to try to move my community, all people, whether you're from the city or whether you're from the reservation, toward replacing those things, toward restoring those things, toward protecting those things, and toward feeling like this is my home and this is why I have to do this. This is why I have to be responsible. So I just wanted to leave that message with you. I know that I'm really emotional, but you need to be this emotional. You need to feel this way. Thank you.
Is this microphone? Is this working? I have no idea why I'm supposed to follow these two, wahine. Because part of me just wants to carry on the conversation that they started. Aloha kakiaka, good morning. My name's Keala, and I prepared something written because there's so much to say about Hawaii, and if I just try to freestyle it, I'll not tell you some of what I think you need to know. So I'm going to talk a little bit about origins and occupation and what these things look like in Hawaii and how notions of originality and the actual settler military occupation operate on subtle and not so subtle levels of being. In advance, I want to say that in order to do that, I'll stop plenty times along the way to explain a few things about identity, culture, and politics. I also know that some Hawaiians will eventually come across this online. I don't know if there are any Kanaka Maoli in the audience here. But in part, I'm also speaking to them, even though they're not here. I'm not just speaking about us. I'm speaking as a Hawaiian to other Hawaiians. And because time's so short, I want to apologize for the shotgun approach. I'm hoping that it won't just come out sounding like a list of dirty deeds and ugly truths. We call the American presence in Hawaii an illegal occupation. Some people call it the prolonged belligerent occupation. That's like using international legal jargon. Even Hawaiians are very conflicted about the ideas of what the foundation of the occupation is. And so what ends up happening with us is that we don't end up so much protesting en masse the way that we should, but we often end up having these fights basically over what's actually happening to us. And I think that's tragic because the focus stays in the idea of legal speak. And in the meantime, our world is being cannibalized and our culture is being cannibalized by Americans, tourists, and industries from all over the globe. In the absence of this kind of intervention that I actually believe really needs to take place, what happens to the Native people in Hawaii is that a lot of people start to opt for a lesser degree of oppression. It's such an oppressive place that for many of us, the only way we can be empowered in it is to just maybe be a little less oppressed. And right now, what's happening, one of these seemingly less oppressive things is what President Obama's going to attempt to do. In 2015, he's going to attempt to federally recognize us as a Native people of the United States, which we are not. And he's going to use his executive powers to do that. So a lot of Hawaiians actually want that, well, not a lot, but enough, want that because they want the money that's going to come from the military contracts, from the federal contracts that they're going to get. Most Hawaiians, I believe, don't want it or are confused, especially at a time when Hawaiians are calling for the deoccupation of Hawaii. And by the way, when I say Hawaiian, I mean the indigenous or Aboriginal people of Hawaii. Many use the word Hawaiian to refer to descendants of any ethnicity of the Hawaiian Kingdom, which was overthrown by the United States in 1893. When I say Hawaiian, I'm talking about Native Hawaiians, Kanaka Maoli, Kanaka Oiwi. And just a side note about that, the US occupation of Hawaii began in earnest in 1898 when they created counterfeit legislation and called it a Treaty of Annexation, but all they did was pass a joint resolution. Actually, they kind of smoked that joint because they passed a joint resolution and then pretended to have annexed an independent country. The Hawaiian Kingdom was recognized as an internationally recognized as an independent country in 1842. It was the first non-Caucasian country admitted to the Family of Nations, which eventually became the United Nations. So we've been dealing with this occupation for over 120 years. In a way, the country is under arrest. It's not just occupied. It's incarcerated and it's in solitary confinement. And that metaphor actually makes sense. It actually translates that way in our community as well. We make up just over 20% of the population, but we're 50, 60, and 70% of the incarcerated men, women, and children in Hawaii. Just a reminder, Hawaii is actually 2,400 miles away from here. It really isn't part of this country. Am I really down to 3 minutes, brah?
Sorry, no, it's 5.
Okay, well. There are many haole narratives about our origins as Hawaiians. I have to stop again and say something about the word haole. It means white person. I identify as hapa haole because my father is Irish. Haole is a really good word. It's just a word. But because white people get freaked out when they get called white in another language, that word's been completely rehabilitated over the past 20 years, and somehow people are trying to say it means foreigner. I promise you, I've never met a Hawaiian person who called a black person a haole, ever. It's only really used to describe white people. In fact, if I were to get in a fight with somebody in here, if I were to rumble with you and win, and call you a fucking haole when I did it, I could be charged with a hate crime. They actually, it's done that way. So, anyway, the haole narratives about where the Hawaiian people came from are intended to erase us. Haole science, as it pertains to Hawaiians, is how manifest destiny functions today. You put science and capitalism and the state together, and you could name that course Economic Terrorism 101. The monetization of acts of ecocide and cultural genocide via the desecration of our sacred sites and burials, monetary incentives to destroy a people's spiritual reality. Their obsession with origins is an excuse to continue their practice of colonization in a so-called post-colonial world. And the logic behind haole science is one of supremacy, white supremacy. And in their story of us, we don't belong in Hawaii any more than anyone else because according to them, we're all settlers. There's a recent article, by the way, that details how Polynesians, quote unquote, rediscovered the Americas before Columbus. So you guys, you should rest knowing that when you were lost, the Polynesians paddled up here on your shore and rediscovered you. And they used the science of DNA to say that because they found some sweet potato DNA that goes back thousands of years. But they never mention Hawaiians. They always show these Polynesian guys paddling on the world's largest ocean wearing these gourd helmets. I guess they're just out there looking for chicken DNA and sweet potato DNA. Our cosmology is nothing like what haole people try to tell us it is. Our cosmology, which is called the Kumulipo, the Kanaka, the people, we don't even show up till 1,000 generations into that story. We're just part of the story. We're part of that chain of living things. And we come from the land. We literally come from the kalo. We come from the land. We're related directly to the land and the things that grow on it, and the animals, and the gods and goddesses, and Tutupele, who right now is making her way through Pahoa, making new land. That is Hawaiian thought. That is Hawaiian thinking, not what they try to tell us. But according to the logic of white supremacy, we're supposed to believe their lie, and our truth is supposed to be some kind of a fantasy. You know, in the settler mentality, Hawaiians are supposed to accept the remaking of our world. Now, I don't know how many minutes I have over there, so I'm just gonna, 2. Okay, I'm gonna have to jump ahead here. So the American Empire is still expanding in the Pacific. I don't know what any of you folks know about the Pacific, but the American Empire is alive and well through the military. And the military occupation is the foothold in the Pacific. And it is now literally expanding throughout the Pacific, swallowing Guam whole on its way to Micronesia in an effort to control Asia. There are bases in Australia, Africa. The expansion has been going on for a long, long time. The worst hit, however, are the Hawaiians. And I want to just circle back to this idea of economic terrorism, because when we talk about industries like militarism and tourism, like people don't really want to think of tourism as like a kind of terroristic industry, but it is in Hawaii. It's destroying the place. And you know, people want to have their fantasy of the place. They want to be able to visit it and take a vacation. Even the most progressive liberal people don't really want to embrace what it is that I'm saying. So Hawaii ends up being like the beautiful girl that gets raped to death because of that industry. And as far as the way it looks to me, the industry, the tourism industry is peddling fantasies the way pornographers are peddling misogyny. And this is what gets visited upon us every day. But Chief Caleen mentioned something, and I'm going to wrap it up and end on this. When economic terrorism is dressed up in the astronomy industry, absolutely nobody wants to admit the devastation that it ushers in. People think it's harmless to want to look at outer space and look at the universe and try to figure out where we came from. Because white people, I don't understand, but origins is like a big deal. So they deploy countless, destructive things on the earth, but then at the same time, they use the same ill logic to say that they need to know where we're from out in outer space. The fact is that in order for that industry, just like for the military industry, and just like for the tourism industry, in order for the astronomy industry to exist in Hawaii, we have to be erased, we have to be removed, and we have to be assimilated. So right now there's a plan to begin building what's called the TMT, a 30-meter telescope on the summit of Mauna Kea. That mountain is the tallest in Polynesia. Its sacredness is part of our spiritual, religious, cultural, and even political reality. So you folks here in California, please make a note. The money for this atrocity is coming from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation in Palo Alto, Caltech, and the University of California system. These California-based people are using the $1.5 billion as the incentive to invite the whole world to desecrate one of the most sacred sites in all of Polynesia and in the world. We're being told that the temporary jobs, construction jobs, is worth threatening the freshwater aquifer of the island of Hawaii, which is on Mauna Kea. So those of you who don't care about sacredness, at least try to care about the environment and the endangered species there. Hawaii has the largest number of endangered species habitats per square mile in the world. We have the largest open field tests of genetically modified organisms taking place in Hawaii, in the world. We have the largest military command in the world. We're a sacrifice zone for the United States. And I know we're going to talk a little bit, and I do want to talk a little bit about what Jeannette was saying, but you're all responsible. We all have kuleana. And in Hawaiian language, that means you have knowledge, you have something, you have power, and you have responsibility. We're all responsible for what happens in the Pacific. We're all responsible for what happens to Hawaii. Let's exercise our power. We need your help. We're going to do a blockade. They're not going to build that telescope in the spring. So everybody's invited. We need your support, all your support, because come spring, we're not going to let them build that telescope. Mahalo nui.
So did you all want to talk among yourselves, or do you want me to ask these questions? Whatever you want me to do is fine.
Maybe you can start with a question.
Okay, we have 3 questions. And how long do we have for the whole time? and we can do any of the questions we want. Okay, first question. You are still here despite 500 years of colonization. What do you want white people to know about resistance? I want to resist the destruction.
You know, it's a struggle for us to be here. It's a struggle for us to hang on to our language and onto our songs and to get the kind of knowledge that creates that understanding and connection to, say, Buyumpuyuk, Mount Shasta, which is renamed, right? All of our beautiful places got renamed. And so now we have to use those language as well as teach our own language of what that means. You know, Buyumpuyuk is a name for that mountain that's a twin peak volcano. And I'm not sure what Mount Shasta means, other than maybe there was a small man named Shasta, because that's what they like to do, is name huge, majestic mountains after small little men. But for us, to have that knowledge means that we know that volcano and those lava tubes that run down into Mother Earth from Mount Shasta come up all around the world, because that's what my grams told us, is that there are sacred mountains that hold Mother Earth together. Whatever happens on one mountain happens on the other mountains. When one mountains are losing water, like on our mountain right now here in California, maybe you don't know, but the sacred spring there is going dry at least 2 months of every year for 3 years now. And this is a big warning sign. When we found that out, we offered a fire and water ceremony to ask the Creator, ask these spirit beings to look down and help us learn how to change this, make it turn around, bring them back into balance. And in doing that, we went to the tallest mountain in the world, and that's in Hawaii. We'd never been to Hawaii before, but we went there because that was the tallest mountain in the world. And it had the oldest water in the world. And that was a volcano, and it's connected to Buyumpuyuk. And they also had the sea turtles, which are the oldest beings that live both in water and in land. And so we had to go there, not because we went vacationing in Hawaii, but because we had a connection. And in that connection, we met traditional people in Hawaii who could take us to these places in the right way, sing us in, let us know the stories that we needed to be aware of, so that we could put down prayers for this fire and water dance to bring back on our mountain. But in addition to that, there were many women around the world who came to that fire and water ceremony, who were experiencing the same kinds of things on their mountains and in their homelands as that. And this is what we're working on now. And so, you know, it's very difficult. There's very few of us who actually still follow the old way, and we're searching for each other in the long run, because right now we have a call out for a women's gathering of those women who believe in their traditional cultural way, not in any church, not in any other religion, but in their very own, what was given to them by Ol Elbas, to follow and to guide their families and their responsibilities here. And it's very difficult to find them because, you know, the other culprit is religion that has gone around the world and left us homeless and poorest of the poor and gave us a book. And that's what we have now, and those people are still hanging on to that book, and they still have nothing. And we're dropping our responsibilities is the worst thing. That we've stopped singing our songs, we've stopped making our fires, we've stopped training our children. So it is difficult. And the more support that, you know, we can have to fight off these issues, like the tar sands. I mean, if you've ever seen Mordor, that movie, it's real. It's in Canada. It's like it's not a theory anymore. It is actual thing that's happening. So it takes, you know, we're in a precarious position about being able to live in this world like it is, you know. And it takes money. I mean, you can't even live anywhere without money, right? Because you have to have insurance for your car, and you have to, maybe you never have a wreck for 40 years. but you still have to have insurance for your car, so you're paying money out, you know, and we have to go to the top of the mountain. We have to go up to the prayer places. We don't own those places anymore, so we really can't stay there. So it's very difficult, you know, and I really am thankful for all of the Indigenous peoples who are able to hang on to that little bit, because I think that's where the knowledge is. And one day we're going to get together and we're going to talk about what Mother Earth is talking about, what is in our future, the way that we used to.
So for me, I guess the idea of growing up in the presence of two really separate worlds and realities and navigating that, for me, has always been to try to find a way to bring that experience to people who are impoverished about it. We as Indigenous people are the wealthy ones, because we still have that spirit inside of us. And the people that are impoverished are the people that have lost that and that don't have that and have to find all these other things to try to fill that hole inside of them. It's one of the reasons that I decided to do a PhD. My PhD is in my language, in my ceremonies, with my people. I go up on the mountain to fast for the things that I have been given to talk about and to share and to work with people that I can gather and find and say, listen, I maybe have a few things you might like to hear, because you feel that inside of you. And I think that part is really incredibly important in its authentic form, the way that she's talking about. So I work in the university system. I'm, the person that'll push my way into any door and say, this is my place. You can come to this place. And you can be healthy in your spirit and in your mind. You don't have to fear and try to fill that hole with all these other things. There's another way. And it has to do with knowledge, and it has to do with knowledge that is experienced, not belief, which is what I think religion is. I really, really would like to be able to work with people that could lift that curtain, because the world really, really needs it. We as human beings, we as Qilh people on this planet have something that we're not using. We're dehumanizing ourselves away from it with all of these things that we're doing. We're regressing. We're not moving forward. What is looked at as progress and what is looked at as things that are going to launch us forward is really taking us backward from the things that we can be and the things that we really are. And that is what we're missing. That is what you're missing. Indigenous peoples worldwide are losing that as well, because they're getting pulled into that world. And we need to do everything that we can, because it's human beings that are at risk. The earth will go on without us.
I'm never going to volunteer to go last again. Just making a mental note out loud. I feel very warrior-like right now, and not in as beautiful and feminine and sacred a way as these two beautiful women beside me are. I have almost zero faith in the systems that exist. I see every day, all day, what's being done to my people and our homeland. And I have a hard time being polite about that. Okay? So everybody in here tells 10 people that, you know, some Hawaiians said, get the fuck out. That might help. We need you to pass it on. You know, there's a film I made, Noho Heva, which Derrick mentioned. It's actually for sale in the lobby at a pretty decent rate. Try to get a copy, you know, pass it around to your friends. Talk about Hawaii. Understand, it is not the 50th state. And with your help, we actually have an opportunity because of the horrors that they're going to try to perpetrate on Mauna Kea. This I will say to these beautiful women, they're reminding me, yes. I mean, I know it always comes back to the sacred. It actually starts from the sacred. If anything I do isn't starting there, I'm not doing anything. You know, aloha is a philosophy. It is not a tourism industry slogan. It is a philosophy about reciprocity, about love and life and belonging. Aloha aina, malama aina. These are philosophical, ideological ways that Hawaiians, for thousands of years, have developed that have allowed us to live there before Captain Cook and his syphilitic merry men got lost over there. And you know, there were 1 million Hawaiians alive. And without any of this opala that's there now, without any of the infrastructure, now there's like 1.3 million people there. And look at the place. It's a toilet. Americans think the Pacific is a toilet. Nobody even talks about Fukushima anymore. You know, when you're in the Pacific, you actually care about the fact that there's almost no more fish, that the ocean is dying. It's terrifying to be on the receiving end of this society, this culture. It is terrifying every day. And because I'm Hawaiian, people go, wait, hold it. You're not supposed to be that angry. So then I gotta blame being Irish. But being angry, that's a healthy emotion in the face, you know, when you're facing down the United States. So, you know, unfortunately or fortunately for my people, I got invited to this amazing event. And I got to be a part of the conversation that's beginning today, that will go on today and tomorrow. I'm incredibly grateful for that opportunity, Derrick, and Max, and Lier, and Sabra, and everybody that put this together, and for all the work that you've done. I'm trying to get some of the radical environmental, political thinking that goes on amongst you folks into Hawaii. It's a tough gig because we are an indigenous people and we have to be real careful. We have to be real careful what actually makes sense to us in our place. But I know we need it. So I feel very grateful to have been able to come here and be on the stage with everybody and talk story with you just a little bit about what's happening in Hawaii, because we need your help. That place is being murdered. One of the most beautiful places the Creator made is being murdered. You can stop it. The people in this room can stop it. So.
So we have like 2.5 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read both of the first 3 questions that we got, and then, of course, you can do whatever you want, but you can either answer one of these questions or you can just do final words, and we've got like 2 minutes for the whole thing, 3 minutes for the whole thing. So yes, in 3 minutes, what is the appropriate role of spirituality in resistance?
Wait, say again?
What is the appropriate role of spirituality in resistance is one question. Another question is, any thoughts about the tension between nonviolent action and more militant action? Is it acceptable to escalate our tactics now or ever? Or you can talk about anything else you want.
Okay, for us, for the Winnemum Wintu, we follow the spiritual. We do things because we are given that information from the prayer places, from the sacred places. We don't just up and say, hey, count our pennies and we're going to Hawaii, or count our pennies, we're going to New Zealand. Or, you know, we're a very poor tribe, but we still have obligations to do things that we feel that the Creator has given us to do, including going to see Chief Spence when she was on her fast about the things that were happening in Canada. We still don't know exactly why that happened, but we know that there's a connection. And at one point in time, that's going to unfold in the same way that we were given the instructions to go there. And so if we come from that prayer place, you know, I, as a younger person, was much like my friend over here, and I would look at my grams and I'd say, why aren't you so terribly angry? Why aren't you there? And it's because we can't do anything from that position. We can't carry on. We can't make good for our kids coming up behind us. But I also wanted to say is that we have to be careful as Indigenous peoples and Indigenous leaders that there are many of us who are being murdered, disappearing, having infiltrators coming to into our own camps. And so it's hard for us to open up our gates and say, come on in, because we don't know your intent. And we've had people come in who had the intent and looked like they were going to help us, who actually got inside and caused splitting and turmoil and havoc and heartache that we almost could not recover from. Because once it's inside of our camp, it's like a cancer. It just goes from one person to the other person, and we lose our harmony, we lose our solidarity, we lose those things that help us step forward and to step out and to be at things like this, to share and to give out, what we can so that you can stand up.
So I just wanted to make 2 or 3 sentences here. Yesterday, Lynn Cornby was arrested. Lynn Cornby is the chair and head of the molecular biochemistry department at Simon Fraser University. She's a scientist and a professor, and a respected professor at Simon Fraser University. The proposed LNG pipeline that's going to go through from Edmonton over to the Burrard Inlet is going to go right next to Simon Fraser University through Burrard, through Burnaby Mountain. Yesterday there was 33 people that were arrested, people from the community. The mayor of Burnaby said, this is as quoted as saying, there is going to be a war. So that kind of change has to happen. That kind of person has to step forward. We saw her getting arrested last night. That's unusual. And I think to move toward that kind of knowledge, to move toward that kind of commitment, she said, I'm going to cross this line, the RCMP line, because I have to be a good citizen.
I'll just make kind of a quick comment. I know that to have spirituality without political thinking or processes is like a bird with one wing. It's like politics without spirituality, In Hawaiian world, it saddens me when people try to separate the two. If you're going to say the prayer, you must be willing to be part of the answer to the prayer. And that means that you have to be willing to go and put your body out there. Whether you're an intellectual, whether you're somebody who didn't even go to formal school, whether you're rich or you're poor, it really does come down to all of us now. We have to be willing to go the distance when it comes to protecting a mountain or protecting a river or a stream or an animal, even a bug. We have to be willing to do that. But it does have to start from the sacred, because if it doesn't, here's the thing, we will go insane. Because what's happening to us is insane. And if we start from that place, we'll go insane. We'll stay crazy. So to be well, we have to start with the pule, with the prayer, but be willing to be part of the answer. That's all I have to say. Mahalo.
Yeah, thank you.